Ladies and gentlemen, today I've got the great James Cummings, the voice of Pooh, Tigger, Drake Mallard, so many other fantastic guests and stars on all of these cartoon TV shows that we used to watch as kids and now as adults. James, how are you, sir?
Life is good. I'm hanging in there, and all is well. Everybody, my family is happy and healthy, and daddy's rich, mama's good looking.
That is a fantastic if you don't have a book out yet, please tell me that that's going to be the tagline for your book.
There you go. Sounds good.
So, when I started out doing this stuff, there was for sure some voices and people that I wanted to talk to that just reached out to me when I was a child.
Mhm.
Pooh being one of them. Not so much that I watched the show so much as a young kid, but because I was named after Pooh, not Julian, my real name, but my mom nicknamed me Pooh. No idea
Oh, there you
why,
go.
right? No
Oh
idea
yeah.
why. I guess I was just a little chunky little kid, but I had such a resemblance to that little character that I just
Yeah.
fell in love with this show. Um, and
That's
it
funny.
made
I
me.
have my oldest niece. I called her Pooh Bear. She had all this blonde hair, and she favored, and she would only want to wear a diaper. I would babysit her occasionally for my older sister, and she had, like I say, she had all this little blonde fuzzy hair, and she favored this one little red shirt. And I said, God, Debbie, she looks like Winnie the Pooh. Come here, Pooh Bear. And so that would be my name. And then, and then I grew up, and all of a sudden I'm Pooh Bear.
What
Now
is
she
that?
says it to me.
What is that like? Because I can tell you before we get into anything,
Yeah.
I wanted to see Christopher Robin so bad in the movie theaters, but my
Hmm.
wife and her friends went out on like a girls' night to go see this. And I'm really glad I saw this when it came out on DVD. This movie hit me so hard. A 31-year-old red-blooded American hit
Sure.
me so damn hard in the feels. And a lot of that has to do with your voice as these characters, man. This movie was so beautiful. But
Thank you.
going back in time, right? How did you get on the radar for them to say, "Hey, man, do you want to play Pooh? You want to play Tigger?" Or how'd that come about?
Well, it's pretty standard. There's a place in Burbank, still there, and it's called the Voice Caster, and a great guy named Bob Lloyd started it up, and it was just a casting facility. You'd go there and you could audition for, uh, a battery commercial for cars, or to sell cars, or cartoons, or
Yeah.
anything, and they had a big they Pooh had been gone. See, it's such a big part of everybody's lexicon and everybody's folklore, so to speak, personal history now, because it's been 30 plus years, as you just said. And but prior to that, it had been gone. Of course, that's in 80, 87, maybe 80,
Yeah.
88. And he'd been gone for almost 20 years, from the movies. I think they made a day for Eeyore, and Winnie the Pooh and Tigger 2, all those, the three that they put together and made a movie of it. And that had been like 65 or 66.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the big worldwide well-known thing that it is now. And so, I just moseyed in, and I told the story 100 times. I auditioned. Let me see. I auditioned for Piglet and Owl and Eeyore, Tigger and Pooh. My Kanga was no good, so I had to pass on that. But I really really felt good about Eeyore.
Mhm.
I remember going home saying, "Okay, I think thanks for noticing me." Not bad, right? Oh, ooh, that's pretty good.
It's fantastic.
And my agent calls up. She goes, "Well, I have good news and bad news." I said, "What do you want first?" And I said, "Well, you might as well start with the bad news." She goes, "Well, you're not going to be Eeyore." I said, "Oh, wow, really?" Because I thought that was my only shot. She goes, "No, no, no." And I said, "Well, who got it?" She goes, "Well, Peter Cullen." I go, "Oh, you
Oh
can't complain about you
no,
can't complain about losing to Peter Cullen.
Optimus
Peter
Prime
Cullen's
himself.
he's the man with the plan." So I said, "Well, say la vie. You win some, you lose some." I said, "Well, what was the other news?" She goes, "Well, you are Winnie the Pooh and Tigger." And I went, "Oh." I said, "Oh, well, I'm okay then. I'm fine. Never mind. you know, I'm good."
Well,
And I wasn't even Tigger the full time, because at the time, bless his heart, the great Paul Winchell was still with us, but he was going back and forth at the time. Not that you'd remember, but at the time, at the time, there was a terrible famine over in Africa. It was a place
mhm.
called Biafra, and it was awful. And Paul, being the genius that he is, Knucklehead Smith, ventriloquist, Tigger, and then he invented the artificial heart. So naturally, he had something to do about the famine. He was going to raise little mud sharks, mud puppies. They kind of raised in the they grow in the banks of the Mississippi, and they're real nutritious. They're like salamandery frogs,
Hmm.
half fish, half that. Nothing, nothing to look at, but apparently they're very, very high in nutrition. They're,
Yeah.
and you can raise them in dirt and mud and spit. So he was over there and he was trying to develop that as a food source. And he'd be over there for like 2 or 3 months. Then he'd come back for 2 or 3 months. Then he'd be over there for 2 or 3 months. Well, when he was gone, I was Tigger light, and I would do Tigger. That's the way but I was like on the job training, and so that's how that happened. And then of course Sterling was Holloway was very, very old at the time,
Mhm.
so he didn't want to. He wasn't. He was out of the game, so to speak. But and then eventually, when Paul retired, it's been me ever since for 20 some, I don't know, long time.
Well, when you sit back and you look at all you've done, right? Is Pooh at the top of your list, or there's some other characters that you really just you love but you don't get asked enough about?
Well, I've got I've got so many. I mean, thank you, Jesus. It's the right problem. It's the right problem. But Pooh and Tigger I always say that they're in their own category. They're apart from everything else. It's like if you have like 5 or 6 cars, but then you have one Rolls Royce. Well, you're not going to throw that in with the Chevy. It's in its own category. It's in its own lot, right?
Yeah.
But so that's for sure. And but then from there, I got to tell you, Darkwing Duck is way, way up there for me.
Yeah.
The terror that flaps in the night, and he'll never go anywhere in my heart. And then definitely Ray from Princess and the Frog is very near and dear to my heart as well. Because
It's a beautiful movie.
being an old New Orleans boy, and I was a deckhand on a riverboat, and all those memories. I mean, it just it's very, very dear to me. And then Hondo Onaka, the one of my newer guys.
Mhm.
He's about like 10 years old, but to me he's new. And now all of a sudden I get to steal the Millennium Falcon like 100 times a day, or 500 times a day, whatever, depending on on the crowd at Disney World and Disneyland. And
Mhm.
and so those guys they're off to the side. They're up in the clouds.
Yeah, I got you. I mean, it's when you've got such an iconic voice, and not just your voice, but you're taking an iconic character, and most people can say that character, like you said, had not been touched for 20 something years at that
Yeah.
point. It wasn't to the height or the popularity it was now, and you ushered in the popularity of Pooh, and because of you, like I said, I'm ever entangled with
Yes.
Pooh because
Yeah.
that was my name, man.
That's
Um,
great.
and
That's good
you
stuff.
said something. You said something I really, really love because I'm a former Navy guy, right? I used to be on a
Uh-huh.
boat too, um,
Oh, there you go.
but I didn't have great food like they did in New Orleans. So two things
Yeah.
really is one, how'd you become to get on this boat? Was it just a summertime job, or was it something you were just striving to do? And what was your favorite food to eat in New
Yeah.
Orleans?
Well, I can answer that in reverse. Probably red beans and rice,
Ooh,
which I
yeah, classic.
still I still make regular. I made last week,
Hmm.
so and then anything from New Orleans, any New Orleans food, it's my favorite food.
Yeah.
But the thing about the boats, I was born in Youngstown, Ohio, and I moved to New Orleans when I got out of high school. A buddy of mine got out of the army, and he said, "Well, I'm going to Mardi Gras. You want to go?" And I go, "Sure," because it was like 20 below zero.
Yeah.
And I was working in a steel mill, so it didn't take much to convince me to leave that. And I moved to New Orleans. I went to New Orleans originally for Mardi Gras, and I kind of knew I wasn't coming back. But the thing is, you get down there, and and you're 18, 19 years old. You don't have 10 cents to rub together. And a buddy of mine told me, he goes, "Well, you can get a job as a deckhand on a riverboat, and they have a kitchen on them. You can eat now." And I thought, "Oh, I'm in," So, I was one of the merchant Marines. I joined the merchant Marines. Um, and that's how it led me to my life on the river. And then from there, it also, a lot of times I would be the only guy on the boat for whom my original language was English.
Hmm.
They're from Louisiana, but they spoke French first.
Yeah, French
First, they spoke
Cajun.
Cajun French, and then they had to learn English, and so I couldn't even tell what the hell they were saying half the time, and they were speaking English. But that's where I got. Speaking of Ray the Firefly, that's where I got that accent like that down there. Yeah, that's where I learned it me. And
You also
And
had Jocks too, as well, from
one
Scooby
thing
Doo.
led to another. What's that?
I said you also had Jocks from Scooby Doo and Zombie Island. That's my
Oh
favorite
yes,
Scooby Doo.
absolutely. And Leatherhead.
Mhm.
Leatherhead, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I knew he'd be in there somewhere. There he is. He's a good-looking cuss. Uh, and I'm telling you, I often have when we first started doing the show, because I just moved to California, and it was like a year or two later. It was pretty quick that turtles were cast, and I was the bad guy. Um, and I must say that his name was Léonce Leblanc, and he was the very first riverboat captain that I was ever on. It was on a boat. It was on the smallest boat on the river, and it was called the Old Dutch,
Mhm.
and it was docked right up outside the French Quarter. It sounds very exotic, and trust me, it wasn't. But uh, they said that well, there's an old crusty alligator, a Cajun, from Louisiana, who gets turned into the bad guy, and he's big and he's brusque and he got a deep voice like that. So I just did captain. I
Mhm.
just did the captain, Captain Leonce, and and I'm telling you, I have a theory, Julian. The thing is, if you do a perfect impression of somebody that nobody knows, nobody will ever hear of, you have a new character.
Yeah.
And if you do a terrible impression of somebody that everybody knows and they can't even recognize it, well, then that's a new character. So I figured nobody knows this guy from this Cajun from Louisiana. So I'm going to do my dead on impression of him like that. And so I did. And I often wondered if his grandkids were sitting around going, "Hey grandpa, what you want? You want to come in here and take a look at this gator? What's that gator do? Oh, he's a good looking guy. I like his voice. I can't imagine, how I wonder if he do books on tape. I, who knows, right? But so you pick these things up and you never know how it works out.
It's always fascinating because I love talking, like all the people I talk to, from voice actors to writers and screenwriters to chefs and musicians and athletes. You guys are my favorite people to talk to, voice actors, because other than
Rightly so.
other than like the atmosphere is so fun, it's very jovial, everybody's laughing and generally having a good time.
Oh yeah.
But much like the dish that I asked you, what was your favorite, you said red beans and rice. I think there's two things in this world that elicit an emotion almost instantly, right? You get transported back to a time, and
Sure.
that's the smell of a dish like those red beans and rice.
Oh yeah.
Or for me, it's always been fried chicken. That's my favorite thing in the world. If I could eat it every day, I'd probably be 600 pounds, but I'm pretty sure I would be happy to an extent, just miserable, but happy to an extent. So the
That's right.
smell of that transports you back. And what you guys do, a fucking voice, something as simple, and it's not demeaning or anything like that. It's not diminishing what you guys do. A voice makes me feel like a goddamn kid again, man. And like I
Sure.
said, it's fantastic. Did you know you had a knack for voices or dialect or picking up mannerisms at a young age, or was this something you developed as
Yeah.
a kid?
Yeah, I did. I was an annoying child. Uh, I would be doing impressions of school teachers and the nuns and everything, and they loved it. Oh my God, they couldn't get enough of me. It was terrible. Um, but I've done many impressions of like geez, God bless my Aunt Grace. I've told this story before, but there was a character named Lieutenant Spinelli on Chippendale's Rescue Rangers, and he was sort of a punch drunk boxer, and he was from the city there, and he was Lieutenant Spinelli. What are we gonna do with these little guys? And bless her heart, that was my Aunt Grace, growing up, and it goes back to my theory: a perfect impression of somebody nobody knows, you get a new character. And but I always knew that I would do that, and I like when I was a kid, I enjoyed being in plays, but I didn't want to be, I was 10 years old. I didn't want to be the little prince. I wanted to be the ogre that
Yeah.
lived under the bridge, or the troll, or something, something like that. So the wizard that had a weird thing about him,
Why
and I
was
was, and I was inadvertently training for what I was going to do as an adult.
it? Mhm.
So
Why
you
why
put all
why
that
why do you
together.
think you gravitated towards those different, those not the cookie cutter characters? Why do you think
Yeah.
you'd shown that much interest in it?
Well, it's more fun.
Yeah.
It's more fun that, would you want to be the insurance salesman or the vampire? Well, Okay, you know what I mean?
Now, are we talking like Blade level vampires? Or are we talking
Yeah.
Twilight level vampires? Because we're
Tough,
talking
tough,
Blade.
tough to say.
It just really depends because Matt Damon played a really good insurance salesman, or whatever it was. It was a weird, eclectic type of movie, but
Yeah, but you know what I
he
mean.
had his shit together, you know.
Yeah, yeah, you know
But
what I mean.
nonetheless, man, what was your first gig coming on that you got signed for as far as voice acting goes?
Dumbo Circus. I was Lionel the Lion, and it was taken basically from the movie Dumbo, and it was the little mouse, Timothy the Mouse, but it was people in costumes. It was little people in costumes and big people, um, and so they couldn't have like a 4-foot mouse walking around, so they made him a lion cub. But it was basically the same character, and so I went up, and I had passed around my audition tape to a few people. I was working at a store called Video Depot for my brother-in-law and sister at the time. They owned a string of those in Southern California, and I was running one in Anaheim Hills, and one of our customers was Sal Romeo, and he I made a demo tape and I gave it to him. He was a producer. He had just come out with a movie. I can't not remember. It was like a B horror movie, and he was the only person I knew in showbiz. So he said,
Yeah.
"Well, here, give me your tape, and I'll pass it along." And he gave it to Don Bluth, who had just made Secret of Nim and The Last Unicorn and that guy. And then he was working on video games at the time called Dragon's Lair. I don't know if you remember those. Those are ancient times, but very, very early on. But he said, "Well, you saw," he called up actually like 2 or 3 days later. And he goes, "Hey, kid, yeah, you're pretty good. You don't suck, but I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing anything. So I tell you what I'll do. I'll hold on to your tape. If I hear somebody's casting, I'll pass it along." I said, "Oh, we can't beat that." Then about 2 more weeks went by, and a guy named Frank Brandt calls me up, and he goes, "Hey, how you doing, kid? I got a tape from Don Bluth." And then, yeah, and I go, "Great." He goes, "Yeah, well, you don't suck." I said, "That's what I hear." And he said, "You want to come audition?" So I said, "Sure. Can I do it on my day off?" And he goes, "Oh, you got a job?" And I go, "Yeah." And he said, "Sure, yeah, come on up." And so I went up and I auditioned for Lionel the Lion, and I got the job, and that was it. And then from there on in, that was the rest is mystery. And then fortunately for me, I think, gosh, we must have done 120 shows, 165 shows. I don't even remember, but we did 2 shows a week, and of course that took like maybe 8 hours tops, and I was making about $350 more doing those 8 hours than I was doing the 50 that I was working at the Video Depot. So in the midst of my mathematical genius, I knew which way to go. I said, "I think I'll go this way."
Well, I
And
mean,
so
it's
very
kind of
fortunate.
worked out for you at this
Yeah, it
point.
has. 30 some years later.
Is that how every I can't imagine, like, especially in today as my voice cracks and I hit puberty. Um,
Yeah.
I can only imagine like how much that goes around. Like, ah, man, you didn't suck. You want to try out for this? Was that like a
Yeah.
common thing back in the days? Like, you're okay. You're not great. You're not good. You just don't suck.
You know.
Want to try out for this or?
No, I mean, they were being, facetious and
Yeah.
fun. It was, I'm probably embellishing here, but it's I was very fortunate, and I got like the first 2 or 3 jobs I auditioned for, and it's funny because it set me up to think that that's how it works. Oh, you audition, then you get the job. No, not necessarily. I was very fortunate, and plus there wasn't, everybody and their dog in the business now. I mean, the whole world is now, everybody does voices now. And I go, "Really? What'd you do?" And I go, "Well, I did the answering machine for my local Kmart." "Oh, wow. Well, now you're talking." See, I had no idea you were at that level, you know. So
I gotta stop you just right here for just a second. You are probably the funniest person I have had on here. You're very I love the
oh,
way
good.
you just interacting, man. It's just the fact that you're self-deprecating, but you're also, I don't want to say snarky because that's not the right word, but you're
A
just
little bit.
shit and you're just there. And I mean,
Oh, good. I'll
I
take
mean,
it.
we're like I said, we're only like 20 minutes into this shit, and this is probably the funnest I've had in a long time. Not to diminish any other characters or people I've had on here. It's just
Go ahead. They're all bums.
you brought up something earlier in the thing with Leatherhead and
Yeah.
the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that you got to do. And then I'm almost 100% sure with as long as you've been in this business and doing what you're doing at the height and the level of you've been doing it, you've had to work with Rob a little bit more than just the Turtles, correct?
Oh, Rob, all the time. Rob, he's one of my best friends.
Now,
Yeah,
when
him and Jess too.
oh
I
man,
mean,
I'm so
tons of
glad
them.
the Animaniacs are
We could
back.
be here all day.
Yeah,
We'll be here all day long.
it's so fantastic. But whenever you guys are around each other, and by you guys I mean voice actors, are
Yeah.
you picking and like pulling stuff from like each other as far as like I can't really get this dialect or I can't really get this accent down? Is that who you guys go to, or you just watch stuff on YouTube, or how do you flush out an accent or a dialect for you?
Oh gosh, with me, I don't know. I've always been a sponge, and I've always known, like since I was 5, that I was going to do this.
Mhm.
So, like I say, I always wanted to be the troll or so I was always drawn towards the character side of it anyway, and I think and Jess Harnell put it well one time. We were at a convention. He said, "Well, when you're acting, you blah blah blah. You're a voice actor, and he said, well, here's the thing about being a voice actor, is it's a small V but a capital A." And you're an actor first who just so happened you can't see them. You're using their voice. That's all. That's the thing you have to remember first. And if you take that approach, which is certainly my approach too, it'll keep you it keeps you more honest, and because you have to get everything, you have to get every little nuance in a voice or with strategic pauses,
Yeah.
and you see, so that kind of thing. So uh, I mean, I've I tell this one story about a guy who, when we were doing the California Raisins 1,000 years ago, he was an on-camera actor, and you have to remember that. And it's funny when on-camera guys come and do voiceover, because they'll be in front of the mic and they'll go, "Well,
Acting.
no," and all you can hear is "No." And it's like, it's just not, you gotta do something. You gotta, spiff, come on, wake up. So I'm not even sure there was a question in there or an answer, but there you have it.
No, I love it nonetheless. I mean,
Yeah.
Rob and Billy West has both said the same thing. Like
Yeah.
it's weird to see somebody that, because you can tell when people are doing it for, I've said this numerous times, so people are probably pissed, but you can tell when people are doing it as a passion, and you can tell when people are doing it as a profit. And especially as fans, when we see somebody doing something and they just throw a cartoon and then they got some random big name in there, right? You're just like, oh,
Yeah.
they're just doing this because they don't have faith in you guys, the guys that sit here and take a two-dimensional character and turn them into 3D. They turn them into life. As dumb as that might sound, as
Mhm.
a cartoon coming to real life for us, man. And we get it.
Oh,
I know
yeah.
you guys get it. And I really
Yeah.
wish they would let you guys do what you guys do, and that's make 2D into 3D. Um,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
doesn't.
It's a fun thing. It's a beautiful process.
Did you think you'd be having as much fun, let me, I don't even want to sit there and put words in your mouth. Are you having as much fun or more fun now than you were back then? Or has it just been, all uphill type of thing? It's been fun.
Well, I wish we were busier. We're all sitting at home now. So I definitely not having as much fun as I usually do. That's for sure. Because I mean, this is great, but it's not work. It's not going in,
Yeah.
because I like like in the past X amount of years, decades, or for that matter, a lot of times you're doing cartoons, you're doing shows, and you're doing it all by yourself, and there's nobody else in the room. And I don't like that as much. I like having the whole cast, or as many of the cast, in the recording studio at the same time as you can. And and that's obviously gone by the wayside this year, which is stinks. It's to high heaven, but God willing, we'll get through this. But but no, I'm a big fan of everybody being there, because you're putting on a play. That's the way it was to me. It felt like we're just good old fashioned. Let's put on a show, and you can react and see. The thing about me is, for better or worse, I ad lib like crazy.
Yeah.
Like Hondo Onaka, I probably. I mean, I know that I did say the words they wrote.
Mm.
Um, uh, uh, and then I would always give them one line as written, and then I'd give them two or three that I just Touretted out, came up with, and that's just how I work. and you can't do that if you're flying solo
Yeah.
because it completely
Different
um,
energy.
yeah, completely screws up their response. I have this goofy story. I never worked with Rob. Well, I guess I did work with Robin Williams, obviously, but I not in the same room at the same time.
Yeah.
He was coming and going, and we did Aladdin 3, the Prince of Thieves,
Mhm.
and he wasn't in Aladdin 2. Dan Castellaneta did it because he didn't think it was going to be that big a deal, and then it was a big deal, and he went, "Oh, the hell with that! I'm coming back. Move out of the way, little cartoon man." And so he came back, and I had a scene with him as Razul because I was the big muscle bound guy who was always after Princess Jasmine and blah blah, the big guy. And I at one of the sessions I was doing a courtroom scene, quote unquote, with what Robin had decided, or Genie had decided he was in a courtroom and he had put Razul on the stand, and I ad libbed a few couple lines for this and that, and they said that, and when speaking of not being in the same room at the same time, he wasn't there to react and I wasn't there to react to him, so his line no longer worked, but they liked mine, so they brought him back in to fix up a couple lines, and he goes, "What's that? Oh, okay, fine, yeah, yeah, let's. Oh, yes. After all, Mr. Cummings had a really good ad lib. We don't want to lose that, and just busting my chops, and he said, "Yes, well, that's all well and good." And he goes, and then Ginny leaned over and grabbed him by the toes and ran him up like a. If you see this movie next time you see it, it's when he takes Razul and rolls him up like a shade on a window, and he goes, "I will not be upstaged by a tertiary character." Now, where was I? You know, so I'm proud to say I got totally dissed
By
on film by Robin Williams.
sidebar
Just
for just a
fantastic.
second. Robin Williams, hands down, is my favorite actor of all time.
Sure. Oh
Um,
God, he
just
does it all.
I've never seen anything like him, right?
No.
Not
Uh.
before or not since, right?
No, indeed.
He's probably one of those once in a lifetime, like yourself, once in a
Singular.
lifetime type of people.
He's very
Um,
singular.
yeah, and it's just crazy. And when when you guys were doing all of these, because you did this one, and oh shit, I blanked here for a sec. I can't remember the other Disney movie you did. Oh,
I
you
do
were
that all the time.
part of the singing voice for Lion King. Excuse me, for Scar.
Oh,
Um,
Scar. Yeah, yeah. Lion
and,
King.
and if anybody could have made the live action Lion King better, it would have been your voice. The most haunting
Mm.
song or haunting scene in that whole thing is when Scar and the hyenas are doing "Be Prepared," right? And I don't know if you've seen the
Yeah.
live action remake.
Yeah.
That was the flattest shit I have ever seen in my life. It didn't elicit any kind of. I was not terrified like I was when I was a child, seeing
No.
scale these mountains with these hyenas and these dark green clouds and all this other crazy shit.
Yeah.
And then that voice that you helped with that. How much of that
Yeah.
did you do? Did you they just come in to do?
Well, he never says the words "be prepared."
Mm,
He doesn't even get to the
yeah,
chorus. He Now all the time I know that your powers of retention are as wet as a warthog's backside. That's all. The talking is him.
mhm,
Um, but it's all "be prepared." That's all me. And and it's a there's a few fun stories about that. I've had that with Christopher Lloyd too, and in a movie called Anastasia, and I don't know if they told Jeremy that was done.
mhm.
And
Surprise.
I've had that with Ed Asner too, and it's a weird it's a touchy thing because this guy, he's a great actor, and he, of course I sing, and they go, not really, but this guy. And I remember Sir Tim Rice, he goes, Jeremy was leaving, and they said, well, Jim's here, and I Jess and I, Harnell and I, uh, and I wrote the fart verse, by the way, in Hakuna Matata. That was me. Oh, the shame! I thought about it. What's in a name? And I got downhearted every time today. Pumbaa, not in front of the kids. Sorry. Hakuna Matata. And we're back in the song. And Jess and I, they had us because Ernie and Nathan don't sing.
Mhm.
And so they figured, well, let's just get Jim. He could be Pumbaa, and Jess can be uh, Timon, and they can sing the song, and then they can give them a cassette. They can drive around in a car for 3 weeks, and that way they'll know it the same way they know Happy Birthday.
Yeah.
You just heard it 100 times. And then it's 10 times bigger because there's nothing sorrier than getting in there with a singer who doesn't, or an actor who doesn't sing, and it's hard for them. That you feel bad for them. You know, you're not crazy about it for yourself because you're sitting there going, "Oh my God, come on." But you know, which is terrible. But you know, you feel bad for them, so they figured, well, let's do it that way, and we're doing this the thing in it, and I remember Rob Minkoff's going, well, I don't know, these words are, I don't know, because Tim Rice wasn't there. He wrote the lyrics, and he says, I don't know, I had it easy, you had it, you have it easy, I had it tough. It was always tougher for me when I was growing up than it is for you. He goes, does anybody hate when their parents do that? And I go, yeah, I do. You know, we all do. So I said, well, let's quit talking about that then and talk. Doesn't this guy stink? You know, and they go, yeah. And so I made up the fart verse that he, and it stuck. And at the end of the movie, I went up to Don Hahn and I go, you kept the fart verse? And he goes, it's the funniest thing in the movie. I said, oh, okay. Thank you.
I love hearing this inside, information and seeing. I don't want to say your claim to fame as a fart joke in Lion King because
well, it's not bad.
It's really not. You've done so much more cooler shit than coming up with a fart joke. However, in your entire career, have you gotten a fart joke over anywhere else other than Disney's production of The Lion King?
Well, Princess and the Frog. I was
more fart director.
Yeah, yes, yeah. It rhymes with art director. but there was a scene there when he, if you recall, when Ray first comes over there and introduces himself. Well, let me introduce myself. I'm a firefly, yo. You know, and he has to screw in his butt. You know, he goes, oh, sorry, gotta do that. Oh, sorry. You know, and Tiana and what's his name look at each other, and so I got one fart joke in two major Hollywood movies. I'm so proud.
So what movie are you going to try to get it in? Because you got to get you got to get a 3. You got to go 3 for 3, right?
Well, I came close in Christopher Robin, and no one to this day has busted me. No one, not a soul. And about a billion people have seen this movie. And I only talk about it in interviews, and inevitably it comes up in this way because if you recall when Bryony was when the little girl, oh God, I know her real name, I can't think of her name in the movie, when they were at the train station, and she's running through there with Pooh and Tigger and Piglet and Eeyore, and the officer of the law says, well, there's a guy, the taxi driver is going, there's something wrong with these little animals. This little girl here's got something wrong with her. Oh, is that right? Is the little girl in this stuff is scaring you, mate? Oh, God, that's horrible. Darling, just run along. It's going to be fine. She goes, thank you, officer. And I go, thank you, orifice. And I called him orifice. But I did it right 3 or 4 times. And for some reason, they put in, I don't know if Mark did it. I don't know who did it, the director, but they used the thank you orifice. And it's just sitting there. And I've seen it in the theater with people like 2 or 3 times, at the different premieres in England and New York and everything, once in Toronto. And no one responded. No one caught it.
What?
Like at all in the whole audience. And I'm sitting there going, am I the only one that hears me saying that? So it's just one of those weird little things. Next time you see it, thank you, orifice. I mean, I can't really say I'm proud of it, but it's like a little inside joke, I guess. But I mean, it's just plain as day.
If anything, you can sit here and those on your IMDb page or your Wikipedia page should have bullet points or slots specifically for these lines. Credited for Timon's fart joke, credited for Ray's.
Yeah.
I mean, not to mention, we got this fucker in here, Winnie the Pooh, and he called him orifice instead of officer.
Calling a cop an officer, an orifice.
It's fantastic.
Well, it's the same syllables, just rearranged.
Yeah. You're really wordsmithing that shit up, huh?
Oh man.
When you're in here and you're getting in these creative flows, because how did you do Christopher Robin? Was it they had already had the movie done, or were you doing lines as it goes? Or
No, it was weird. It was a hard process because it's gosh, I don't know if I have any footage of it or not. But anyway, they had like a grayish doll, and it was very gray, very drab dolls, basically like the quote unquote life size,
Yeah.
and they were doing scenes with them, and they would have puppeteers off like this. It was similar to the way we did Roger Rabbit. That was the first thing I ever did, and I was off camera with a big giant black velvet all over my whole body, so I wouldn't reflect any light.
Yeah.
And they were holding up the one rabbit. There were and they ended up cutting the scene anyway, or the weasel. I'm sorry. And then I would do the lines, like that, and then they would pull the thing away, and Bob Hoskins would be holding focus like right in midair where the weasel was supposed to be, and it was like that with this. Ewan and the gang, they were looking at supposedly carrying on a conversation with Pooh or Tigger or whichever, and it was just this little grayish doll with somebody holding it up like this
Yeah.
off to the side, so as try to not distract the actor, the on camera actor. um, and so it was a weird little process, but boy, I mean, it's just so flawless as it's completed,
Yeah.
and I got to watch it. It took a while. It took God, we were doing that for like over a year, I think. And one day it would look this way, and then the next day the cuts would look a little better,
Hmm.
and now we got the backgrounds, and oh, where'd that tree come from? And it was, they were blue screening stuff in the middle of London, and it was magical.
Yeah.
I cannot describe it, but it was just a joyous thing. And what we did is they flew me over originally, and it was just um and I always get a kick out of this part of the story because they're going, well, this way, if we have you, we had, and it was Pooh first. I was originally just doing Pooh,
Yeah.
which is another story. But so I'm doing all of like this big marathon session, this 6 hour session in which I did the entire movie in one sitting, or we had lunch, but and that way they had it in the can so that the actors on camera, like Ewan and everybody, all of them, the live action people, Haley, and they had something to react to.
Mhm.
And there was a little stuffed animal over here, but when it would be my voice coming out or something. And so, that way they had something to react to. And I always thought, well, that's good. I'm really glad for them. But you do realize that I'm doing it in a vacuum and there's nobody in the room with me. And I'm making sure that they have something to react to. Who's reading for me? So I thought that was interesting. Okay, so who's doing the real heavy lifting? Uh, you know, but it was, I couldn't have been prouder, and everybody was so great. Ewan and Haley and Mark Forster, and of course Brad Garrett's an old buddy of mine. And I wasn't originally cast as Tigger,
Mhm.
but I remember my daughter Gracie. She's 15 now. I think she was 12 and a half, something like that. We went down. They finally had we went down to see the rough cut, and it was another fella who had been doing Tigger, and he sounded like Rodney Dangerfield and uh,
No
and
respect.
I don't know, Groucho Marx put together or something, and it was just like, and we're sitting there, and we were the only two people in the screening room, and there was a couple of the producers were behind us, so and we had this really ultra private screening. I couldn't believe it because they wanted to show it to us and blah blah blah, and so okay, and we get in the car, and Mark couldn't be there. Mark Forster, the director, he Disney had called him away, but he wanted to be there.
Yeah.
Um, for the very first time I could see that I saw it put together, and it was very rough. I mean, there was wires were showing everything. It was very rough cut. But on the way, as soon as we leave the room, my daughter Gracie goes, "Daddy, you have to save Tigger." And I said, I couldn't agree more. My phone rings and it's Mark Forster. And he goes, "Jim, I'm so sorry that I wasn't there. I couldn't get away. Disney called me. But I wanted to talk to you about Tigger." And I said, "Okay, let's talk." And so I ended up bouncing back as Tigger. So I got to do Winnie the Pooh and Tigger too. It wouldn't have been the same.
Who's easier to slip into as far as or the acting or the voice or the mindset for the character? Is it Pooh or is it Tigger?
Oh gosh, I never thought of it. I don't know. Tigger's probably closer to my own personality, bouncy and slight wise guy, I suppose. And Pooh's just more or less laid back.
Mhm.
He's kind of like the calm. He's the eye of the storm. Everything's zooming around him 100 miles an hour, and he's doop, dee, doop, dee, doop, doop, dee, doop, dee, doop, you know.
So
So
I asked Rob when he was on not too long ago, like, what is it like when we just passed Thanksgiving, but what is Thanksgiving like with, Rob? And he would explain that his sons, they would get a big kick out of it for a little while, or that his son's friends would call. And then like, oh, hey, can we talk to Ash? And they're like, no, Ash isn't really here right now. He's like, all right, well, can we talk to Raphael, or can we talk to Donatello, or can we talk to insert, whatever character,
sure, yeah.
you would play at that time. Did your daughter do the same thing with you? Like, hey, daddy, do the voice, or if you're out and about, or you're going through the drive-through, hey, dad, ordering food, ordering Tigger.
Oh yeah, yeah. On and off. But my older daughter, she's in her late 30s now, and when we Darkwing Duck first broke out, she was about the same age as Goslin.
Mhm.
So she became Goslin at school, and she, for some reason, she didn't like it. I go, that's technically kind of cool. I mean, isn't it really? I mean, really, is it bad to be Goslin? Come on, you're Darkwing Duck's daughter. What's the matter with that? Oh God, Dad, you don't get it. Oh my God, because and I'm sure, as an 11-year-old, I'm an eye roller. But by the time time goes on, and they're going, well, wait a minute, you know what? This is actually not all that bad. And I can remember my other daughter, Raleigh. She's in her early 30s. Uh, there was show and tell, and there was this one little girl who was a real brat, and she was the rich kid, and blah blah blah. And so for show and tell, she brought the talking Winnie the Pooh.
Mhm.
We had just done and it was a big story. It was called My Interactive Pooh. Esquire magazine gave it the Dubious Achievement of the Year award just for the name, My Interactive Pooh. Think about that. So anyway, she brings the stinking doll into the thing and sits there, and he tells everybody like a 15-minute story. I remember it well. And of course they didn't know that I was her dad, and so Raleigh said, "Okay, you like that? You like that doll? Okay. Next week, I'm coming in, okay? And I'm going to bring Winnie the Pooh too, but it ain't going to be a doll, all right? And it's that kind of thing. So I go strolling in, and they're all like, So she was like, that's how you do it.
How old was she at this time?
About 11.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Tell me she's doing something in comedy. That is the
Yeah.
funniest shit I've heard. Like,
Yeah.
oh man, this kid over here is bringing in a doll.
Uh-huh.
I got the voice. I've got
Yeah.
Pooh at home.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
tells me to clean shit up. I hate it all the time. But
Yeah. Right. Right.
I'm going to bring him in and I'm going to tell you something. So
Yeah. 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 Now we're going to see. Okay.
there's a very East Coast versus West Coast vibe there going on, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
No doubt.
so we're starting to hit towards the end of that hour, and I don't want to keep it too much longer. This
Sure.
has been fun as hell. I got to tell you that.
Oh,
But
good. Yeah. Same here.
so whenever I go and have anybody on, there's always a few things that I like to do. I like to go and post it on social media and say, hey, if you guys could ask James anything in the world, what would it ask? So the first comment that happened was actually my brother-in-law. Well,
Uh,
technically it was my wife and her brother. So she was like, who was his favorite voice to voice, right? So we kind of brought that up. And then almost immediately after my wife posted that question, her brother came in there and said, what was his favorite voice to act, and why is it Cat from CatDog? Right. So that's what he wanted to know. Um,
Right.
what was that like? That cartoon was so fun as a kid. I mean, I was probably 12
Yeah.
when it came
Oh,
out.
good. Yeah.
And I gotta
We loved
imagine
it.
you had so much fun with that character.
Oh,
What
yeah.
was that like for you?
It was great because, anytime you can play a character that's always just incredibly frustrated, it's always good comedy gold there, because Dog was just as obtuse as he could be, and Cat was kind of persnickety, and they were the perfect odd couple,
Mhm.
and the old joke was, please don't ask us how we went to the bathroom. In fact, one of my favorite ad-libs of that CatDog were at a dog park or something, and whatever, and they go, and "Hey, dog, I have to go, cat, I have to go." So we had to go to the bathroom, and you wait like 5 seconds, and these two guys come walking out, and he goes, "So that's how they do it." Ooh, you know, that, and then your mind just fills in some weird blank somewhere along the line. But that was one of my favorite cartoons. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And Tom Kenny, you can't do any better than him. He's hysterical. He's the greatest.
SpongeBob
He's a good
himself.
buddy of mine. SpongeBob, you betcha.
It's that cartoon alone, SpongeBob. So
An
small
acid
story.
trip.
Back in the day, I wanted to be an animator. I could see something and I could draw it, but I could never really create, from my own head, right? So that was always the issue I had. And I remember just doing all these doodles and stuff like that. And when I was younger, we went to Nickelodeon Studios when it was still here in Orlando, Florida.
Oh yeah.
Had taken us, and they were getting ready to roll out SpongeBob. They hadn't released it yet. There was a whole bunch of teasers all over Nickelodeon for it coming this summer or coming this fall, whatever it was when it released. And I remember, walking up there and seeing the animators, right, just going to work, storyboards,
Yeah.
all the stuff. And I remember like, oh man, I was super, super, what was it called? Motivated by seeing this. And I'm like, oh, I can do this. This is like, I see somebody do it. I can do this, right? And then I see them take a perfectly good picture, just like this, and then just rip it off the thing, crumble it up, and throw it behind him. And then I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. If I would have done that at my age, I was like, my mom's hanging that up on the refrigerator. Why is he
Oh God,
throwing
yeah.
something that looks so pretty? And then I look
Yeah.
to his right, and then he's just crumbling
Yeah.
up papers, throwing them over, and then he's got a pile of fucking balled up papers that he just didn't think was good enough thrown over, and it's just a mess. And I was like, man, I'm never ever going to do this as a kid, right? Or as an adult. So flash forward now, and I'm
Yeah.
watching all of the stuff that you do. What was that script like from Nickelodeon when they handed it to you? Like, hey man, cat, dog, they're joined, they're brothers. What was that story like? Was it just a call from the agent, or is that something you sought out?
Well, they I didn't audition for it originally. For whatever reason, I think a lot of times different studios like Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, I've worked for them both extensively, but a lot of times they'll think, well, I think he's like a Disney guy, isn't he? Like Mr. Disney or whatever, and they're not real sure they want to have you over there because it might be too wholesome sounding. But unfortunately, I'm a total wise guy, so I'm really acting when I'm Winnie the Pooh, believe me. Um, and so I think they must have gone through. I think there's like 4 guys, 3 or 4 guys who were cat before me, and my dear friend Jenny McSwain. She and Andrea Romano, and different other ones, Sue Blue, and down through the years, of course now Kelly Ward, different voice directors, Gordon Hunt. They'll call on you and they know what you can do, and they said, well, she says, well, you're banging your head against the wall. Just shut up and call Jim Cummings and see what he comes up with. And so they did, and I went over there and I read for it, and Tom was there, and it was at the old Score One, I believe it was, over in North Hollywood, and it was a long time ago, but we read together, and the chemistry was there, and they go, okay, let's make a cartoon. Now we can finally start, because they'd tried like 4 or 5 different cartoons, and different characters, different people doing cat. I don't even remember who it was, but Tom and I, when we worked together, it just clicked, and so then I became cat.
How was, whenever you get a role, whenever you find a voice, obviously they're going to have like some kind of picture, or they might have some kind of description that
Oh yeah.
helps you along the lines as far as like finding a voice for this. Was any of these characters that we've talked about, from Darkwing Duck to Pooh to Tigger, to anything that you have done, have you ever just sat there and like, shit, man, I don't see this character, I don't get this voice, I don't, or is it just you just throw shit against the
No.
wall until it happens?
No, you just no, something always speaks to you. Something something comes up to you. Like with Darkwing, he was kind of insecure, but he was a bit of a jerk about it, and he had a huge ego, and and that's food for that's grist for the mill right there, you know. And he takes offense quickly, and that type of thing, and just very braggadocious, and all those character traits
Very
help
millennial.
with the it helps with the, the portrayal.
Mhm.
So, Hondo's another one. He's Mr. Prophet. He's looking out for number one at all times, and so that gives you some impetus, some motivation to get in there and get it done, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine. Whenever I hear, you know, like you, the voices that just going off in my head, and that sounds a little bit more crazy than I want it to. But whenever I sit here and I watch a cartoon or I watch a movie, I hear you guys, right? And I'm like, oh shit, I can point out James Cummings, Rob Paulson. We got Justin there. You could pick
Yeah,
anybody because you, like I said, you guys are doing such a fantastic job. Now we've talked about the roles that you've done and you've enjoyed. Now there's a couple things that we've talked about that you're still working on now, like Curious George, and was it the Mickey
hmm
Mouse Funhouse or the Clubhouse? I can't remember which one it was.
Funhouse now.
Funhouse.
Yeah.
Are you working? I don't know if Mike's working on this one, but are you working with one of the writers, Mike Kubat?
Yeah, he's been in a few of them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So he saw that I was having you on, and he wanted to say,
yeah.
"Hey, loved working
Oh
with you.
yeah, excellent.
You're a fantastic guy to work with and work for." Um, but and then you're also doing Shark Week as well, man.
Yeah.
It's an eclectic group. You're playing a monkey, a mouse. You're playing in the mouse world, Disney's world,
Oh yeah.
and then you're sitting here talking about sharks eating people, man. Which which one do you think is the most fun that you've had, as far as those three goes, that you're working on right now that you're really enjoying?
Oh gosh, who knows? I don't know, Mickey. I always really, really like, for different reasons. I like Curious George. It's such a classic. I really like the way it looks,
Yeah.
and I mean, how cool are we? We have Dr. John singing our theme song. Come on, my boy, my Curious George. I love that guy. And another New Orleans guy.
Mhm.
Uh, so you can't go wrong there. And those stories, and I like the way they looked. I like the way that the sort of primary colors, not quite primary colors. I don't know what you would call those, but it's just looks so cool.
It pops for sure.
It really, really does.
Mhm.
And with the mouse, I mean, you can't go wrong. I mean, we're on our like fourth iteration of the Mickey Mouse Club,
Yeah.
and it's just keeps on going. And the guys are great that make it. Mark Seidenberg and just all the way down the line,
Mhm.
and the creativity is so strong and so potent. And the people are so good. It's just a joy. You know, and it's fun to be what passes for the bad guy. It's almost like mostly like a selfish, boorish goober,
Yeah.
as opposed to a villain. But everything's so hunky dory in Mickey's world. Donald's a bit cranky, but that's it. So I get to come in and provide the sass, and it's just a lot of fun.
It's
And,
like I
and
said,
and people respond to it so beautifully over the years.
we can tell when you guys are having fun and you guys are sitting
Mhm.
here making magic, man. We're picking it up. We can tell
Yeah,
when we're just throwing an actor in there to get a big name. We can tell when guys like yourself are sitting here putting into a position to really shape not so much somebody's childhood, but probably somebody's life. I told Alan Burnett, not too long ago, I was like, all of this shit that I surround myself with on a day-to-day basis, there's not much Darkwing Duck stuff out there. They haven't done any of the rescuers as far as these pops go and all that other shit. So I'm hoping that one day we'll get a more big catalog, at least from what you have done. There's Pooh out there, there's Tigger out there, so there's those.
hmm
But if it wasn't for people like you and everybody else that I've talked to, man, I could be into anything. I could be into Twilight, for God's sakes, and nobody wants that.
yeah,
Nobody wants to sit there and see a shitty vampire movie. They sparkle when they go out. Nobody wants to see that shit, right? So,
yeah.
at the end of the day, man, I can't do anything other than thank you for making
Oh,
such a huge impact on my life, is not so much as a child but as an adult as well, because I get to share these same memories,
hmm
these same shows, these same cartoons, these same voices with the little 10-year-old downstairs, man. And
yeah.
like I said, I
Well,
can't
that's
thank you
great.
enough.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. I really do, Julian. It's funny because I've done tons of conventions, not lately, but they're starting back up. Thank goodness. Which because I love them. I love doing it. And I'll be there, and like last month I did one, and there was this girl. She comes up and in this screaming good Darkwing Duck cosplay, and she's 11.
Mhm.
And I said, what? And then this has happened from day one for like past 10 years. I've been doing these conventions. There'll be a 5-year-old and he'll be cosplaying Darkwing. Dad will come up and He'll slap down a big stack of Darkwing DVDs, and he goes, "We're raising them right." I go, "Yes, you are." And this last little girl, she was 10, cute as you can't even imagine it. And I think I put it on my Instagram or my Twitter page. She's there, cute as a button. And sure enough, she got Disney Plus when it first came out. Like it's been out for months now, like 6 months maybe. And I said, "Well, how could she know about this?" She goes, "Well, we were going through, and I checked, and look, and I said, 'Oh, look, honey, Harriet, or what her name was. Look, this is a show Daddy used to watch when he was a kid. You want to see it? You want to see this show? It's called Darkwing Duck.'" And she's nuts. She sat down and watched every single one of them. He said it took her like 3 days, but she would come running over from school, and she would watch Darkwing, just like her dad did.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's too cool for words. That stuff, it makes my day. I get gooey, and realizing that it can transcend it, because it's not of its time. I think things that are classic and timeless are just that. They're classic and timeless.
Yeah.
If it's funny now, it'll be funny then. If it's good now, it'll be good then. If it was good then, it'll be good now. And the fact that people still glom onto it, and it's really, really a strong presence, boggles my mind. I just love it.
Well, we talked about a couple fart jokes in here and an orifice joke.
Yes.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but I did the same thing. We watched the first season not too long ago of Darkwing Duck when Disney Plus came on.
Oh yeah.
In the very first episode,
oh no, what did I do?
Well, you're talking about tossing salad, and do you know what that reference? The first episode, when you're fighting the professor of botany, you're like, "Time to toss this salad." I'm like, holy shit. And I look at my wife and I'm like, "You heard that, right?" And she's like, "What?" And I had to explain to her what it meant. So you hear shit as a little kid, right? And then you go and become an adult and then you're like, holy shit.
And who was he fighting? Bushroot?
Yeah. It was the very first episode. I want to say it's like 10 or 12 minutes in.
Oh,
it made my day to see that, and not only find out that, we're talking poop jokes and fart jokes and all these other different types of jokes that you kind of gotten to get in. I hope that one was one of those ones you got to get into, but nonetheless, man.
Yeah, I don't even think I could take credit for that. I think they wrote it sincerely, like beat him up, like, yeah, you're gonna beat the salad up, Yeah. Oh God.
Well, nonetheless,
I did not remember that one. I'll put that one in the lexicon.
Yeah. If you ever, like I said, it's in the very first episode. It's not even, I think it's like halfway through that episode. Just go check it out. It made my day. I was laughing. I was having a shitty day. I can remember that. No pun intended. Yeah. And seeing that, I'm like, oh man, everything is coming up Millhouse at this point. Well, sir, I don't want to keep you too much longer. This has been fun. This has been entertaining. Like I said, you've been one of the best guests I've had on here. Where can people find you if they want to say, "Hey, James, I loved your show"? Obviously, conventions are coming up, but where can we drive traffic to so they can come and see you?
Well, let's see. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. All the usual things. Facebook is like a weird thing, but it's like mostly family on there now. But yeah, I'm out there. I'm not the biggest social animal in the world, but there's I have an intern now, helps me out, and I've got Jim Cummings world. It's on the interwebs, I think.
Okay.
And you can stop and say hi there. So yeah.
All right, man. Like I said, it's been fantastic, man. He's been James.
All right, Julian.
Tigger, Darkwing Duck. Insert any crazy cartoon that we loved as kids, man. I've been Julian. This is in my head. And we're out of time. James, thank you again so much. I really appreciate it.
Be well. Stay tuned. 2 O's.
Thank you.
Stay dangerous, bro.
You take it easy.
Thank you.
This podcast was presented by the Epic Sewers Podcast Network, the home of all your pop culture podcast needs, with shows like Epic Tales from the Sewer, the Spoiler Force Podcast, CreatorCon Q&A, Comic Watchers, and the What's in My Head podcast. Follow us on this journey and get down and nerdy as we bring you the best in pop culture.